What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to a preview / impressions of Ghost of a Tale. Now, I don't know anyone who doesn't like the Rats of Nim or the Secret of Nim unless they're from New York, where rats can't be good guys and instead are just known to carry off family members in the night. Think Thief and mix that with the Secret of Nim, and you pretty much have what this game is. What's intriguing about Ghost of a Tale is it's not a very big team at all, 4 or 5 people when you include the composer, music workers, the writer, and so forth. So it is a smaller team that built this. But let's just go ahead and jump right on in here. One of the things I have to say, and I want to talk about, of course, is the graphics and the interplay of light and dark and how that informs the gameplay decisions as you move forward, as well as the different tools that you have and how all of that is graphically represented on the screen. And I think the first thing you're probably going to notice as I'm playing through is just some of this footage here is the fact that the game's scale of view is done correctly. You are a mouse in a rat world. You're one of the smallest creatures. You're nimble and stealthy, where there many times are these larger armored rodents. And as you can see, this one pass by here. You're waist high with a lot of these guys, a little bit like the dwarf in Vermintide 2, where you're just at crotch level all your life. What's nice here is you see that scale replicated everywhere, and it's replicated incredibly well. It also requires you to really think on your feet, because there'll be times where you may walk into a room and you're like, what do I do? And you find out that what you actually need to do is you need to see the room from the level and from the height of somebody who is living in it, who is bigger than you, who is taller than you. So you may have to jump on a desk and look around, and it's at those times that you're going to discover the items that you actually need. You know, a lot of people haven't played the original Thief games. Maybe their only experience is maybe Thief 4, or maybe Dishonored is one of the titles that they've seen. One of the things I like here is you have that anthropomorphic animal kind of gameplay and world, and so you can show people places that really don't have that feeling of human interaction. They maybe have some mimicry here, like this door, but as you play the game, little natural hazards that wouldn't bother a human, let's say, can actually bother these characters or cause them danger. And I really did like that. I like that feeling of a different scale and a different worldview to, well, pretty much everything. Now, graphically, it runs really well. 4K is completely possible in this title with current gen or maybe last gen tech at a slower frame rate. But overall, you have an incredibly nice title, a good interplay of light and dark, which is always really important with stealth games. And you also have some pretty good texture work. There are a place or two where it looks like Vaseline Vision has been applied to a couple of the textures, but overall, they're actually really nice. They're very highly detailed for what you're experiencing and what you're playing. When you look at the artistic design of a lot of titles, which does matter, it's not just how many polygons you can throw at the screen. If it was, then any Tom, Dick, or Harry could end up making a game and everybody would just absolutely think it looked great graphically. But what goes on here is the art design, the little bits like the tassel on that back of his hood that shakes around. But the thing that really impressed me were the ears on the creatures of all things. It's one of the things you notice right away on your main character, but even more so on your rat guards, the pink of their ears, and especially as that brightens up in a sort of a fake transparency whenever they get near a really bright light. Especially now when we're entering this era where so many people are making so many games and so many games have so many different looking art directions. It's nice to see somebody do a title like Ghost of a Tale where it doesn't necessarily completely shake things up. We have seen these kind of looks in anime and certainly in a game or two prior. But to me, it's the exceptional artwork, especially when you look at some of the textures. For example, this patchwork kind of hood that I have, really well done. And it does a lot to solidify that fiction and make you feel like this is a place where the materials and everything is sort of handmade, hand-spun, and it gives it a more natural look. And I think that's actually important, especially with what you're going for here as you present everything. Of course, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you don't have a ton of options to change in the graphic settings of the title, but when it comes to lighting alone, even on the lower settings, the game looks fantastic. There's a differential here that you notice, and it's really important. We see a lot of games where the dark areas are too bright, where it's almost impossible to really hide. That does not happen in this game. You can really find spots where it is jet black where you are, and it gives you that extra feeling of stealth that I think you really need. So moving on from graphics, let's talk about sound, music, and voice, and let's listen to a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about voice. There is none. So let's move on. Let's talk about the music. This is done by composer Jeremiah Pena. It is more of, I would say, that classical expectation that you have. There is a bit of whimsicalness that you can certainly pick up on the way the different instruments end up playing. There are a lot of elements and a lot of times where you're going to play where there isn't a lot of music. That being said, there is a cohesive feeling overall here. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes it doesn't go a little bit over the top. That's fine, because more than likely, moments later, it'll get more subdued. And I really enjoyed that, especially in these kind of stealth sections, which a lot of the game is made up of. Let's talk a bit about sound, because this is both good and bad. The sound effects themselves, the samples, the wind rushing past your ears, the different effects of the different creatures walking, where they walk, all of the elements, the tonal changes and the volume changes when they walk over different areas in the game world, spectacularly done. The problem is that there's a little bit of an issue with the processing. I was never able to dial this in because it didn't matter if it was a blacksmith or the guard. They always sounded like they were 3 inches from me. It really didn't matter. That mixing never really felt like there was a processing of reflection or reverb or echo or occlusion. This is, of course, something I think is vital in a game like this, and it could have just been a bug, but no matter what settings I did, no matter where I went into the audio spectrum, no matter where I went into the audio settings and adjusted them, I could never get it to really layer perfectly. I could never get it to feel like the wind wasn't rushing past my ears, even though I was in a subterranean tunnel. There was just something about them that were too close, and I couldn't get that sound channel to widen anymore to really make me feel like these were large places, sometimes subterranean, that you were going to, or that a guard, like I said, was maybe above you and to the right. Now, does it exist at all? Yes, you do have some processing. Sometimes they do appear that way. It's just not, like I said, as wide as I would like. And it's certainly noticeable, I think, in a stealth game. Did it ever cause me to die? No. But something I talk about in the reviews very often is that I think information needs to be given out, parsed out to the player. And one of the major ways you can do that with sound. And I think that here, a little bit of a misstep. So let's talk a little bit about gameplay and story. You play as Tylo or Tilo, who is a mouse and also a bard or a minstrel in this game. They end up losing their spouse, or the spouse is kidnapped. At the same time, they're put in a dungeon, and your entire quest is to go and find them. To do that, of course, a lot of the gameplay is centered around thief-style elements. You can see here above the different characters, little icons indicating how much they can hear you. One of the first things I have to say I was really impressed with the game and how well it did was the information that the HUD gave in various different times. For example, if you're talking to a character and they say something about a location or about an item you have, there will usually be a little section that says click here and you can read more, or you can also just continue with the narrative at the same time. It's really surprisingly well done, especially because you're just seeped in lore here. And there's multiple times where you're going to want to know exactly what somebody's talking about because they mentioned some strange, unnatural word. And instead of going to a different journal or something like that, here you can also see right away what they're talking about. Very well done. And I think that HUD is pretty informative. Another element that I really liked about the game is disguises. You could call them armor sets because that's pretty much what they are. But some of the quests will be, for example, here, like go and find this chest plate. And you can see that there's different disguises in the game, and you get all of those items and you put them on, and of course they adjust your RPG stats. Now, when it comes to RPG stats, you have a lot of the things that you would expect, like resistances and so forth. You have discretion as well, which are really just your levels of how far somebody can see or hear you. If you try to run around in a Campbell's soup can, people are going to notice, and that is the first thing, of course, I did. And right away, all of the guards can hear you from farther away almost instantly. And let's be honest, the entire game is basically the coward's path because you really don't have weapons. You have items you can use against the enemies. And if you get up close, you can only take a couple hits. So you really do need to be able to sprint away as quickly as possible. When it comes to taking them out or getting away from them, a lot of it comes down to items. Now, you have a number of them, including sticks and bottles to break over enemies' heads to knock them out, and even grease you can throw on the ground to make them slip. I did like the fact that, again, you can't hold your own against these characters. They will absolutely devastate you. They'll treat you like your body's made of handles. So you have to run from them at all times or use these items to get away from them. Very cool. You can hide in cupboards, which is also your save spots. And of course, I know a lot of people will be like, I want to save all the time. Well, let me just tell you, there's enough cupboards and enough chests that you can hide in that overall, it's not going to be something you even notice at all. Sadly, Ghost of a Tale does have a couple issues. The first, I have to admit, is the camera. The camera can get quite close and zoom in at times and make it a little bit difficult to actually get away from enemies. And when it comes to enemies, man, there are multiple times where you're going to end up cramped up against a corner and the enemies will be hitting you, and if you have the armor on that would allow you to take a couple more hits, you're trying to run away, but you sort of get caught up on them. In fact, when it comes to the geometry itself, there were a number of times where stairwells were difficult to navigate, not running up them as you normally would, but maybe if you try to run up and leap onto them from the side, let's say, something that you should be able to do. Lastly, when it comes to item use, there was occasional times where I tried to throw the bottle at a character who did not have armor on his head, which should allow me to knock him out. And the bottle just sort of shattered near them. There wasn't a really good amount of collision detection to show me where I was aiming or why exactly I wasn't knocking him out. Again, small details, but something that we should definitely talk about. Let's talk about fun factor for a second. I am enjoying this a lot. One of the things that I noticed though, and it's just funny, is like, look at this. Look at the way he walks. That's awesome. And there's all these little elements that you notice in the animation for things like that. And it sort of becomes an expectation as you continue to play the game. It was just really impressive the first time I saw it. Also, what was even more impressive is once I realized that this is all pretty much one giant open world, a little bit like Dark Souls, where you're unlocking place after place after place. And most of those items have shortcuts to get you back to the original start. Perfect work there. Really enjoyed it. You know, a lot of times it's hard to qualify or quantify why you like a particular game, why you find it enjoyable, why you find it fun. And for me, it's always explaining the gameplay cycle itself, the loop. What is it that you're doing here? And here, you are always moving forward to some new location. It doesn't mean you don't go back, because you do. It just means that you're always discovering more. You're always following some guard along the way to some new location. And even in the smaller sections, even in the sections that are tight and far more linear, which there aren't a lot of them, but maybe some of the catacombs levels or any place where there's a tunnel, you still notice a little bit of a wideness there from place to place to place. So you may end up having a linear moment just for 30 or 40 feet, and then it opens up into a room for you to hide in. Organically, this is easily one of the better locations I've played in a game. What I mean by that is even when you're inside of the enemy barracks, things organically just appear to make more sense. I talked about it in the council review, where it seemed like the only thing that the fashion designer wanted to do in the entire house was put down a bunch of couches and a bunch of chairs, because that was all that was in that game's locations. Here, you don't see that. You see various different elements, various different rooms, and the way that they're spread out, the way that they're put down in the game makes a little bit of narrative sense. Not perfect, I'm not going to lie, but it did work for me. Overall, I have to say, you know, my first initial impressions after a couple hours is it is a very enjoyable title. Animation is excellent. We'll have to see if that gameplay loop can hold me for many, many hours. It'll certainly be more important, especially because this is a slightly more expensive game. And that's it for me. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. Check out Reddit or Twitter. And of course, you can become a patron on the Patreon website for this channel, which allows me to do reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap, as well as videos like this. And of course, every single game, even if I get a code from the developer, I buy. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.